Men, why do you often say you're fine even when you're not? Story 1. Anything I say can and will be used against me. Story 2. If I started saying what's wrong, I don't know when I'd stop. A lot of people would feel bad, and I'd most certainly feel worse. Sometimes not talking is better. As someone who fell for the "you should open up more" thing for a long time, I also found that constantly complaining just adds fuel to the fire. A lot of the time, all you need to do is stop making the problem bigger than it really is, and give it some time, and focusing on it by complaining just becomes a habit. Complaining is a self-indulgent activity that just spreads negativity to whoever is listening. It never really lessened mine. Everything will change in time, and you can pretty much always just put your head down and keep going, and it will be okay. Edit. Yes, bottling it up isn't good either, which is why it's important to learn how to let go of that energy. Journaling is good, meditation is good, just letting go is good. Lots of good options. Story 3. Because if I tell you I'm not fine, it inexplicably somehow turns into me trying to comfort and reassure you. No, it's not because of you. No, I'm not mad that you thought this was all about you. Well, you shouldn't feel guilty. I'm sorry you're upset now. Of course I still love you. I'm sorry for upsetting you, honey. No, I promise I'm fine. Everything is perfect. Someone replied, I got laid off from my job and told my then GF about it. We were living together, and it wound up as me consoling her. Someone else replied, yeah, I had to have a few. When did this become about you? Conversations with my ex, who was always on me about communicating better. So I'd try and it would morph from me opening up into her taking over the conversation. Why bother? Another reply said, just had to drop my closest female friend. Everything that I was open about was just simply used as a weapon against me. For example, if I said I have anxiety, she would list 10 examples of how anxious she was, and I ended up sucking up what I said and brainstorming solutions how to fix her life, because apparently she was triggered, and it was suddenly my responsibility to comfort her. Enough was enough. I don't want to overgeneralize and say all women are like this, but she certainly was. Story 4. My entire life as a man, I've been taught two things. I need to be coming up with solutions to problems, and if I'm not useful, I'm useless. The moment I ask for help or show that I need help with a problem, rather than being the one helping with a problem, I am then regarded as the problem. When I am the problem, I'm not useful. See above. Doesn't take a genius to see that vicious cycle unfold into some serious mental issues. Number 1 rule, don't be a burden. Rule number 2, nobody fucking cares. Number 3, what can you do for me? Someone replied, not just useless, but expendable. Men are taught that they can easily be replaced and often will be as soon as they stop actively being useful. Story 5. Because our vulnerability is often weaponized against us. And worst of all, it's usually someone who wanted us to be vulnerable that does it. Someone replied, my ex was like this. I'd talk about how I felt and it wound up making her angry. It became about her, or redirected to things I was supposedly doing wrong, as though my emotions were somehow a blame or criticism of her, and she needed to even the game. It wasn't, and I wound up, as others have said, needing to placate, backtrack, get back onto the I'm fine, shouldn't have mentioned it train. God forbid it actually was something she was doing that was causing distress. Bringing it up would end with, well, I guess we should just break up. No, let's just work on working together. No? Okay, I apologize, I'll do better. Sorry, every time I was the one trying to diffuse and get back on track, work together. Willing to concede, surrender my emotions and let it go in favor of trying to balance us again. Every single time. She seemed incapable of that. In talking about when I was going through negative emotions, only ever turned into a conversation about her or what I was doing wrong. I recall a time she said something like, what's wrong? I said I was depressed, and she said that was frustrating and tiring, and she was over having to deal with it, that I was the problem for feeling like that. Made me never want to talk with her about it, when it wasn't even about her. Sigh, nearly 8 years, and it didn't work out. Wish I knew she'd never change earlier, or rather, accepted she wouldn't. There are girls out there who aren't like that. Story 6. Because nobody actually cares about your problems or wants to hear about them. Story 7. Evidence of me not being fine will be used against me. Setting doesn't matter in my experience. One of my grandparents died during high school. I was very close with them. A year later, I was still not doing great, and the other kids were calling me an emo wuss to my face. And two of my teachers yelled at me to move on and participate in class. I was still doing great in school, just didn't care to engage with others much. In grad school for the health field, a close family member had a serious health condition, and I thought they were going to die, so I tried working remote. This was years before COVID, but it was fine. Yes, my work quality suffered, but was still generally good. It amounted to an extra round or two of edits on papers. I thought we were good, since they stressed balance and mental health, since we are in the health field. Well, someone didn't like it and wanted me in the office. The chair rolled their eyes at me and said, "If you can't handle your personal problems, I don't think a career in research is for you. Do you even want to be here?" What is especially infuriating about my grad school experience is that a student had free rein to take a few weeks off after her cat died. I have more stories like the above. Damn near every man I know has, and it sucks. Having people not give a shit would be an improvement. Story 8. Most men, at least in my experience, are taught it's expected you're the one to support, not to expect it. Although movements for men's mental health, in opening up or in action, it's also an experience often shared that you open up and things get twisted, used against you, or you're thought of or treated as less of a man. I just think it's a bit of a Wild West right now to be more open as a male, which seems shared in the comments here. So for vast majority of guys, it's just safer to continue on, keeping it to yourself rather than change it and get hit for it. Story 9. Nobody wants to be around sad men. Story 10. If we're angry, we're scary. If we're sad, we're weak. If we're tired, frustrated, upset, no one cares. Buckle up and keep moving. It's easier to lie, so whoever asked can feel good about themselves, and we don't have to deal with managing their emotions too. Story 11. Fake being okay, just pretend. Quote from my dad growing up. Don't get me wrong, he's an amazing dad, but that stuck with me. Fiancé is usually understanding when I do bring stuff up, but sometimes I can tell it bugs her, so I clam up. Story 12. Despite what modern society says, the fact is that men are looked down on and viewed as weak when they do. Nobody wants to hear a man whine, not to mention what we say will almost certainly be weaponized against us at some point. Story 13. Dear God, every guy here needs a hug, a lover, a good neighborhood bar, and then more hugs and friends. I'm a guy, but I've almost always had at least one extremely close share. Everything male or female friend, and or a very close romantic partner. And while I'm familiar with this sort of oppressive feeling that nobody cares, and that manning up is the only option, I don't think it's ever dominated my life so completely. Bummer. I think the really unhappy thing is all the guys in this thread validating that attitude as necessary and even good. Fucking hell, it doesn't have to be like that. Story 14, because quite frankly, society has done an excellent job with invalidating men's feelings. If a man wants to talk about how he's feeling, he's told to man up or stop being a pussy. Or the few times I have mentioned how I'm feeling, it seems the other person is zoned out and not actually listening. I've grown used to not even bothering people. They'll get the standard living the dream. Story 15. Two things. First, women and men talk about their problems for different reasons, and it's terrible how the two don't translate. Women just want the men to listen. Men are generally solution-oriented, and that's what they're looking for. Both are fine, they just don't translate. Second, women don't actually want to hear men be vulnerable for the most part. Not all women, but for the most part showing weakness is unattractive to women, and we know that. For the most part, men are only going to talk to their mother, if that. This is also a bed that men have made, though, so to a large degree we've got to lay in it. Story 16. You know the feeling you get when you type out a large comment, but then delete it because it's not worth the effort? It's that feeling sometimes. Story 17. While a lot of the comments here are brutal, and in some cases my concern is warranted, often some things I think about are, it's the end of the day, I'm exhausted and just want to get to sleep. I'm not ready for a lengthy discussion. I'm still figuring out how to concisely express what's bothering me. When it involves an issue with someone else, wording is absolutely critical, so I may need more time to be able to accurately express my feelings. I think my second point has some overlap with other sentiment of, what I say can be used against me. Annoyingly, when having a conversation and when you try and express, I am not fine, but I'm not ready to discuss it right now, that leads to conversations where the other person is trying to drag it out of me, which isn't particularly helpful either, but is a completely fair reaction. Story 18. The best people can do is empathize, sympathize with me, and put a band-aid on things going on. I either have to fix things or accept things by myself, one way or another. Story 19. There's a scene in the movie Gran Torino that sums it up perfectly. Hey there, Kennedy, you drunken Irish goon. How the hell are you? I'm shitty, but who's gonna listen? Huh, not me, that's for sure. Story 20. I'll tell you another time. If you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.